Hey, I had one of the saddest questions on my social media this week. It was a customer who follows me on TikTok, and she said, I currently have a pet parakeet who hasn't eaten or drank for an entire week. His eyes are unfocused, he hasn't been as active as he usually is, and I think he's going to pass away soon. And I wish I could just put him out of his misery, but I don't have an avian veterinarian near me to take him to. And she was wanting to know what to do. And that, oh gosh, that was just heartbreaking. I mean, you can imagine. I've actually had similar situations like that early in my days of bird loving. Now I've been doing it for about 25 years, so I don't usually go through, those kind of crises now. But I have a lot of information on my blog posts, and I wanted to share with other people what to do to actually help your birds if they ever do fall ill or get sick like that. So I've got Timmy here, my 27-year-old African gray. He's a Timna. He's a smaller than a Congo. He's 27. He's got arthritis pretty bad, and he's on medication for that. But he's kind of demonstrating my routines for you. So we really appreciate that, Timmy. So let's talk about the first thing we're going to talk about is how to know if your bird is sick in the first place. Okay, the earlier you catch a illness or a disease process, the better it is, because it's so much easier to treat it than in the early stages than when it's advanced and many organs have become involved. And there's more organ damage. Then we're going to talk about how to stabilize a sick bird and make a sick bird more comfortable, kind of getting to that question of my viewer who said, I want to put him out of his misery. And I don't know about you, I don't think I could actually kill my bird per se. I could, with the vet, of course, but if I didn't have a vet nearby, I just couldn't recommend that. But stabilizing a sick bird or keeping them as comfortable as possible, kind of that hospice type of mentality, is something that I definitely could do. Then I'm going to talk finally about when do you get veterinary care, what constitutes an actual immediate emergency versus waiting a day or what have you. And we'll talk about how to figure those pieces out. So I've got a sister blog post on this topic, and it's called How to Stabilize Your Bird and Know When to Take Them to the Vet. And you can find that on birdsupplies.com. In fact, I'm typing it in right now because I just lost the page. And that's what I'm going to talk about, is I'm going to just kind of go through that. Now, the reason you might want to know about that is because there's free printouts and stuff that you can put in your bird first aid kit. And, anytime you need to access that kind of information, these end-of-life issues and stuff, then you're going to, feel much more comfortable that you have that information handy, and that you can just really support your bird during those times. So first thing I'm going to talk about is 7 symptoms that birds show us when they're not feeling well. So keep in mind that birds are animals of prey in the wild, and that means that they're pretty low on the food chain. Not only that, they live in large flocks, and the flocks really work to serve as kind of a community where they keep each other safe and they communicate all throughout the day and that sort of thing. Now, if one of the flock members becomes sick, then the whole flock is in danger, because it just is a calling card for, prey, for animals of prey to come get them. They could kill part of the flock in that whole process. So in a wild flock, wild birds will drive the sick bird out of the flock. They'll just So not only is the bird weakened and more vulnerable to getting eaten, which has to make it a nervous wreck, but its own flock mates are afraid to be around it at that time. That's why our birds instinctually hide their illness as long as they can. And sometimes by the time in a kind of a newbie or an inexperienced, even an experienced person, you can miss those subtle cues or clues if you don't know exactly what to look for. And you only know exactly what to look for when you make it a daily habit to scan your bird over and watch for these signs. So each and every day, whenever I go and feed any of my birds in the morning and all throughout the day when I have interactions with them, I'm really honestly doing a mental check to see if everything's okay. So here's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for things like, are they favoring a specific body part? That's how I found out that Timmy has, arthritis in his feet. Is he was, holding one foot up. Are they perching a lot with, just squinted eyes and kind of, like they're just kind of too drowsy to even, open their eyes. Are they lethargic or fatigued, easily fatigued? Perching around a lot and not interacting with their environment type of thing. Is there a loss of appetite? Birds will even fake that they're eating. And so you really have to see, okay, are they dropping it on the cage floor or are they actually eating it? And you can check their droppings too. So the droppings do change. You'll notice a bird either being more irritable and nippy, or like Tim, extremely more anxious and prone to, just flying off, squawking, and wanting to get away. So it's kind of that fight or flight type stuff that you would see. Again, the unusual droppings. And then a lot of times they'll perch with their feathers all fluffed up because that kind of keeps that insulated warmth inside as much as possible. So those are the signs I'm looking for each and every morning. Another thing that I actually do look for is I'm looking for blood on the floor. Have they broken a blood feather? Is there blood on the floor, on the walls, on the cage paper floor? And those are, when I see that, then I know I need to get these birds stabilized. And having been in the, a bird lover for 25 years, I have learned how to make a hospital cage, which is this right here. Sorry about that, buddy. And there's another kind of hospital cage that I have called a rehab cage. I got a blog post about that one. But having a hospital cage ready at all times to go and use, if you will, is really important. Not only does it help you stabilize your bird and keep it calmer and make it feel safer, but it gives them the supplies they need in order to heal, start healing. So, limited activity in a appropriately sized bird carrier. This is a perfect size carrier for my Timna African Gray. I would have ordinarily food and water dishes easily accessible. And I've got the perch lowered so that if he falls off, he's not going to hurt himself badly. And then I like the clear polycarbonate with the ventilation a lot because I can just look at him. I don't even have to wake him up or anything, but to just see, I can check at the droppings. I can check him and see how he's doing and that sort of thing. I can also put a heating pad underneath there if I want to make sure that he has access to warmth. I mean, think about it. When you have the flu, you want to be kind of cuddled up, in your bed with that blanket, warm. Sometimes I'll be wearing 2 pair of sweatpants and 2 sweatshirts because I can't control my body temperature. Your bird has the same symptoms. And so keeping them, quiet, warm, well hydrated, and well fed is going to be really important in helping them heal during this time. I also I've got a couple of dogs, some kind of puppies, I guess you could say. They're 2 and 3 years old, but they're pretty active and they can stress a sick bird out. So I would, if Timmy were really sick, I would put this in a nice quiet area where he could get undisturbed rest as much as possible. Of course, I'd go in and check him, depending on how worried I was about him, either every 30 minutes or every hour if possible. If I weren't home and I needed to check on him, I think I got one of these right here. Oh, a Ring camera. I'd use my little Ring camera right here and just, put it on the cage, and that way I could, or put it, where I could see him if I were at work. And that way, that would bring me peace of mind, and I could be able to get home quicker if I had, to be away from the home at any point in time. So finally, after you've got your bird stabilized and calmed down, the next thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make a determination of how fast you need to get this bird to the vet. Okay, so if it's an emergency, you obviously want to call your vet and get them in ASAP. A quick tip that I'd encourage you to do is about once a year, check with the local emergency animal hospitals, find out who has an exotics vet on staff so that you know which emergency clinic to take your bird to. So I have a little green cheek conure that flew into a window one time, and I just didn't feel good about it. You know, you could tell she was a little shaken up and not herself. And I wanted to get her in as quick as possible. And, you know, I didn't have that information with me. It was a Sunday morning, and lo and behold, I mean, none of the emergency clinics would see her. And finally, I mean, after about 2 hours, it took me 2 hours of calling. I live in Denver. You know, I mean, there's like emergency clinics on all over the place here. It's a very animal friendly state. But finally, after about 2 hours, I was able to find somebody that would actually see my little bird. And so keeping that information up to date and keeping it in your first aid kit is going to be really important. Kind of just as a preventative thing. I don't know about you, but I get kind of anxious when that kind of stuff's going on. And, you know, sometimes if I need to have those notes of what I need to do during those kind of emergencies. So let's talk about what constitutes an immediate emergency. We call it imminent emergency, that I need to get the bird to the vet ASAP. And the list is kind of long, so feel free to go to the sister blog post and print out this article, this blog post on all of this stuff. So let me just go through them real quickly. Bleeding, external bleeding or internal bleeding that you can't get stopped. Of course, it's hard to stop internal bleeding. You'll only notice that the bird has internal bleeding by checking out the droppings on the bottom of the carrier. You know, they'd be black and kind of potentially tarry looking, if you will, or they might be vomiting blood. That would be signs of internal bleeding. External bleeding is just sometimes when those accidents that happen where you just can't get the blood feather to stop bleeding or something like that, and you just try and try and try. So anytime that my bird is having, say, a blood feather issue, it hasn't happened for a while, but I always put them in a hospital cage. I want to be able to observe them. I want to see how much blood is ending up on that white paper towel, and you know, I want to be able to easily handle them so that I can put styptic powder, this product, which you should always have in your bird first aid kit. If you don't have styptic powder, flour or cornstarch will work, but you want to be able to stop that as quick as possible. And there have been times when I have, you know, over a period of a couple hours, kept applying a little bit of pressure to the area, a blood feather usually, and the styptic powder to get it stopped. So I've never had to take the bird in. I've always been able to get it stopped. But having a hospital cage really helps me out during those times, just to keep a very close eye on it. I want to keep my bird as motionless as possible because, you know, the faster their heart beats, the more blood that's lost. So bleeding's a big deal. Anytime your bird gets burned is a big deal. This was a freak accident that happened during a move one time, but my Smokey, my Congo African gray, got on the floor and stuck his beak in a light socket and burned his crop real bad. Thank God I was living in Colorado Springs at the time, and we had an avian vet there that was able to see him immediately, and we got him stabilized. But I mean, I could have lost him very easily over something like that. Anytime that the body collapses or they, you know, lose their balance and they just can't get up, type of thing, that's an immediate emergency. Of course, poisoning, whether it's chemicals or, you know, eating the wrong plant, being fed the wrong thing like avocados or chocolate or whatever. Those are pretty quick emergencies that you need to get them in ASAP. Any animal attack where the skin got broken for sure needs to be seen immediately. The reason is that a mammal's saliva, like a dog or a cat, will cause deadly bacterial infections, like within you know, at least 24 hours or even maybe a little bit less. So you want to get those antibiotics started ASAP. And, you know, you want, if there's any bleeding or puncture wounds, you want those cleaned out. There's another product that you want to have in your first aid kit. It could be something called Vetricin, or on my website, I use a product called or I sell a product called Vet Aid Spray. And Vet Aid Spray is very similar to this. You spray it into the wound. The Vet Aid Spray has a little bit more of a, as opposed to being a misting sprayer, it's more of a stream so that it can kind of debride that stuff out of the wound. But I would still get my bird to a vet ASAP if there were an open injury. just so that those antibiotics could get started. Birds actually, once they get sick, it goes along with them being animals with prey, and their flock mates driving them off and that kind of thing. They kind of succumb to illness. Once they get sick, they succumb pretty quickly. So for me as a pet lover, I'd often rather be safe than sorry and just get my bird in quickly if I could. But we're talking about when is an emergency, and anytime that there's an animal attack or a bite or a serious injury, puncture, an eye is affected, the abdomen, a laceration, those need to be seen ASAP. The more blood the bird loses, and the crappier it feels per se, it's going to go downhill faster. Then if you see it straining when it's pooping, that's not a good sign. That needs immediate care. You think about birds where they're eliminating, every 15, 20 minutes, give or take, given their size. When they start straining, things can get backed up pretty quick. And severe breathing problems, that's when they're gaspy, you hear rattling sounds, it's noisy, they're very distressed, or a telltale symptom is when they're breathing and their tail is bobbing up and down. That means that they're having to work so hard to breathe that they're just using all of the muscles in their body to actually catch a breath. And that can be deadly pretty quickly. It needs to be seen ASAP. Now, I'm going to switch now and say, here's when you need to get your bird to the vet today. Okay, so this is when they're not eating, especially when it's combined with other signs of distress, like the labored breathing or the diarrhea or that sort of thing. You're going to want to call your vet and say, hey, need to be seen today. Labored breathing, which is a little bit different than that gaspy, rattly stuff. That's letting you know that there's an infection when they're gasping and you're hearing the mucus in there rattle around. But labored breathing would look, like shallow, rapid breaths with or without a cough. So that needs to be seen same day if possible. Anytime you suspect that your bird is egg bound, that is a medical emergency, especially if that egg breaks inside of them. That could just be a bacterial nightmare for them. If they've swallowed a foreign object, birds have been known to swallow the ringers and toy bells and all kinds of stuff, and that is a medical emergency. They need to be seen with that as soon as possible, because that could turn into another issue where they can't go to the bathroom. Hypothermia or low body temperature is a critical issue that needs to be seen that day. General injuries, like maybe animal bites, that haven't been punctured, those should probably be seen same day. And then severe diarrhea and swelling on any body part that feels kind of hard or even has a discharge. Those are things that need to be seen within that 24-hour period. Now, there's a lot of illnesses that I've just given my bird a 24-hour time before I took him in, and using a stabilizing hospital cage, that can really help me and my bird get stabilized quicker. But things that you'll want to start using the hospital cage for, and go on more hyper alert, if you will, of just watching them to make sure that they're improving or at least staying stabilized, would be things like loss of appetite, diarrhea that doesn't have blood in it, any indication of pain or straining, that isn't a medical emergency. But just ordinary diarrhea that's not bloody, you can wait 24 hours. Moderate to severe itching that is tearing at the skin when they're scratching, that's a bad sign at times, often. It could be a parasite, but it could also be a sign of fatty liver disease, and you're going to want to get that treated ASAP. Thirst, so your bird is like drinking an awful lot. Vomiting is another thing that you're going to want to put them in a hospital cage for. Timmy, like I said, has arthritis, and so when he gets to feeling really painful and stuff, he loses his strength in his feet and he falls off the perch. And sometimes I will put him in either this hospital cage, or I have a bigger what I call a rehab cage that I use with him as well. Because when he does lose his balance, he has been known to fall on the floor, and then he hits his bum on the floor, and it causes a laceration. And last time that happened, it took a couple of months literally for him to heal. And so we, you know, anytime I see him losing strength in his feet with this arthritis that he has, I try to get him stabilized and, you know, ramp up the medications a little bit more and that sort of thing. So I hope this helps you out. You know, we talked about a lot. We talked about how to bring a bird kind of hospice level comfort if they are in an imminent state of passing away, how to use a hospital cage effectively. We've talked about some of the things to use for your first aid kit. I recommend everybody that has a pet bird have a first aid kit where you can stop that bleeding real quickly, clean wounds out, that sort of stuff. Stabilize, you know, a bone that may have gotten broken. It buys you peace of mind to know that that's available, and it buys you peace of mind, especially if you check it every month, or not every month, but at least annually, and restock it and make sure that, you know, everything's ready to go in case of an emergency. Because just like with kids, emergencies do happen. And then we also talked about, when do you get your bird to the vet? What constitutes an imminent emergency? And this day needs to be seen an emergency, or can I work at stabilizing my bird for a day or so, and then if there's no improvement, we can get in at a later date. So, you know, if you like this video and felt it was helpful, please give me some thumbs up and consider subscribing, because I come out with some pretty important videos that really help you improve your bird care skills. You know, birds are they're exotic animals, and so they're not exactly as easy to take care of as a dog or cat. And not only that, you know, finding a good avian vet sometimes is a real chore. They're not on every street corner per se. And so knowing, you know, as much as you can about when is my bird sick, how do I get into a system of watching that when they're sick, and then how do I stabilize them is super important. And I talk about all kinds of things in terms of bird care and wellness and stuff, how to keep your bird well. So, you know, the more, when you subscribe, you'll get first notice of these, especially if you hit that little bell icon, you know, and you'll get a notification that, hey, new video out. So we'll talk later. I try to put a video out every week, and if you have any ideas of stuff that you'd like to learn about, hit me up. I'm very happy to make videos for you guys. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.